All right, ready when you are.
Okay.
So this was our project. How is poverty in North Korea affected by the government?
By Ansel and Stern.
So our group plan was North Korea's government causes poverty through their unnecessary militaristic focus and poor economic support, which sees North Korean citizens with no chance of escaping their dire future.
Why it matters. Poverty as a whole causes inhumane suffering, risks mass starvation, and
There's a potential loss of an entire culture and the disruption of international stability.
Claim 1. North Korea's focus on their military is a main cause of their poverty crisis. 30% of the GDP is spent on the military, which that amounts to about $5 billion in total spending, which may not seem like a lot, but compared to the U.S., who has the highest spending on their defense, of their military in the world, with over 600 billion, that only amounts to about 3.1% of their GDP. So the ratios here are really off, and that amount of money takes away so much from the North Korean people, and really takes away from what the North Korean government can spend on the people.
This money is to focus on their nuclear advancements, which is their massive nuclear program, which amounts to 20 to 30 weapons and causes many problems in their international scene. And in 2016, they launched 2 nuclear tests and 20 missile tests, and that was in 2016 alone, which is way higher than other countries spend on their military with their time and their money and resources. And this is all stuff that could be put towards medicine and food and supplies for the people that are suffering. And then because of these actions, large heavy sanctions were placed on North Korea.
Effect of these sanctions. For one, it stresses the North Korean economy, which is already under a lot of duress. It limits the amount of crucial foreign aid.
And it also increases the likelihood of another famine, which, due to their problematic military spending, the North Korean government has caused their poverty crisis to worsen.
Claim 2. Ever since the 1990s famine, the North Korean people has not been able to effectively support their people.
The North Korean food shortage in the 1990s resulted in the deaths of 3.4 million people, and it results of many things. The cause of it was partially due to the weather there, and North Korea's land is very mountainous and not much of the land is arable, so for them to rely on just growing their food in their country is not a viable option, but they still attempt to do it.
And one of the main causes of that famine was a huge crop devastation that resulted in a record high food scarcity in North Korea. Because of that, a severe hunger crisis formed. In 2016, the government scored a 28.6 on the global hunger index, and some basis on that. Another established Western country, Romania, scored less than five on the exact same test, and the higher the number, the worse your situation. And 28.6 is labeled in under critical in their ranking systems.
Yeah, 10.5 million people are undernourished, so the food that they do receive, which is very little food, it has very little protein and nourishment in it. So 70% of the country also relies on food aid, and their government also forces people to turn in 2 pounds of rice per month. And as you can see in this chart, in 2013, this is the price of rice going up in just that year.
So you can see, and this is dates as in days. So it starts from August 30th to April 13th. So in just less than a year of a time period, the price of rice just skyrocketed. And that's, rice is probably one of the cheapest foods in the markets in the entire world. So to have such a cheap food become so much more expensive, it really hurts their people. 40% of the country lives under the poverty line, and the average North Korean earns $2 to $3 a month. Imagine if you only had $2 to $3 to spend on everything that you needed to buy in a month. Could you live? Most Americans will probably say no, because most Americans probably spend around over $2 to $3 in a day. So that just kind of comes to show how limited these people are with buying food, water, paying for housing, paying for heat, paying for maybe if they're farmers trying to get the seeds and stuff to plant crops, paying if you're a construction worker, paying for materials. This is all they have. And so with that limited amount of money, they're really limited on what they can do.
South Korea in 2019 they sent $8 million of food aid to them in June, and a lot of this money that was spent in food that they sent, it was not sent to the people that needed it. So the people that were malnourished did not gain the food and supplies that they needed. So the government kept it mainly for themselves and gave out very little.
The North Korean government actually has a history of poor economic management and decisions.
Kim Jong-il is the world's largest Hennessy buyer and spends hundreds of thousands of dollars on Hennessy a year, which it seems like a random fact, but in the big picture, their government should not be spending money on that.
Especially if you can't even feed your own people. In order to tackle hunger, Kim Jong-il bred oversized rabbits to help feed his people, but he actually ended up eating them all. This is another example of just having, the North Korean leaders having no consideration for the people at all. If you're going to breed these rabbits to give to your people, give them to your people. Don't eat them. There's no point in that.
The North Korean government refuses to expand farmable land and instead forces double cropping, which is very hard to do in their country. And if you don't know what double cropping is, it's essentially when you try to grow two different types of crops in the same area, which it depletes all the nutrition in the soil and it makes growing another year of crops there very difficult. And so in the long run, for them to try to grow enough food, it's just not going to be a viable option.
And the situation isn't entirely their fault. North Korea's climate is very harsh towards farmers. Only about 5% of their actual land is available, arable, farmable land. Now, that's not to say that the North Korean government is completely out of the woods. They do have the capabilities to expand farmable land. They're just not doing it. And if they were to do that, then that would make their poverty crisis a lot easier to maintain, because you're allowing more food to be grown and more food to be given to people.
Conclusion. North Korea is in a bad economic situation, and their government's poor economic decisions aren't helping at all.
If the situation has any chance of getting better, the government needs to step in and actually make a smart decision. Solutions. Economically. Cut military spending and use the money to increase wealth for their people. If you're not spending billions and billions of dollars on your nuclear problems that you actually don't need, nobody nowadays is trying to nuke North Korea, and North Korea shouldn't be trying to nuke anybody else. So this money could be used for many other different things.
Governmentally, if they were to disband the nuclear program and establish good relationships with other countries and nations, then that would help clear up sanctions, and it would help their people, because they could have food aid from other countries and get supplies, and when they're in need of help, if another famine were to occur, they could go to these nations and ask for help.
And historically, learn from the past and create more arable land so another famine does not occur. We saw what happened in the 1990s. 3.4 million people died. That's something that nowadays in the modern world is completely unacceptable. If that were to happen again, that would look horribly from the North Korean government. And references.
Thank you very much. I had a couple of questions for these presenters. My first question is for Sterling.
Yes.
How did you decide which perspectives to use in the argument?
Well, when you're looking at poverty, there's one lens really sticks out immediately, and that's economics. Poverty is economic is the direct cause of poverty. If you don't have money, then bad situations are going to occur. Specifically with North Korean poverty, we found that their government was the main cause of it. So looking at this topic through a governmental lens really allowed us to investigate and find a lot of information about the crisis. And then finally, we found out that in the 1990s they had that famine, and that opened up really a way that we could look historically at what happened in the past and try and find solutions for the future. And so that was our big thinking on this.
Okay, thank you. And then this question is for Ansel. Describe your thought process as you prepared to deliver your argument to an audience. Which points did you want to ensure will be emphasized the most in this presentation?
Well, when going through the information that we collected, I really wanted to focus on the famine that happened in the 1990s, and that really hit their economy hard, and that's what was the main cause of the poverty that's still occurring today. And it was very hard for them to come back from that, and they're still struggling. And still in 2019, there was another famine and many people died. And they're still trying to receive aid, but it's not helping their country. So I really wanted to touch on their government's like choices that they make and how it's not helping out their country at all.
Okay, thank you. Really good job, yay!